Welcome back, everybody. We're continuing with the arrow build series, and where we left off from the last video, talking about weight and speed and that trade-off. Want to talk now, we finished out the video by talking about the animal you're choosing to hunt and the terrain you're going to hunt it in. So, Bo, some of the common arrow builds we build in here a lot are the 204 size diameter arrows, right? Kind of right in the middle of your micro and standard diameter size shaft. Yep. Some of the benefits to those type of arrows from different manufacturers are,
the biggest for me when it comes to picking out like a 204 diameter shaft is the amount of component options that are out there. Insert systems, knock bushings, we could go on and on. But generally speaking, that 5mm diameter shaft is going to buck the wind a little bit better because it is a shade smaller, but they come in a really good rough arrow weight, grains per inch specifically speaking.
Good range.
Yeah, it's got a good range. I mean, there's arrows on the extreme light side in that diameter and arrows on the extreme heavy side in that diameter. So depending upon the game you're pursuing or the finished arrow weight, let's say that you're looking for, there's generally speaking an option in a 5mm shaft.
So leading into that, with the options of components and accessories, right? Example, we're building an elk arrow, right? I'm going to hunt elk, I should say. I'm also going to hunt mule deer, but I'm only going to build one setup. Sure. So now I'm going to look at components on a 204 because I like, I'm going to be hunting hopefully in that 40 to 60 yard range, potentially on some shot scenarios, stretching it out a little bit, not super far. Yep. Like you already mentioned, the 204 is a little smaller than a standard diameter arrow, so from a wind perspective. But the components, you get to, whether you're looking at something like an Easton axis, right? Mm-hmm. Brass on the inside. Iron Wheel also has some components that you can put in there. Ethics system, you got Victories. You can run multiple options in.
Oh, it's almost endless, to be honest. Yeah.
So again, and I don't want to say that I don't follow the Ashby recommendations and his findings. I just know that we're 2021 right now, right? Technology has come a huge way in the last 20, 30 years, 35 years since he's really done his studies. One of the things that really caught my attention when Aaron Snyder interviewed him on ConfaruCast, when he said they had to stop shooting compound bows because they kept blowing through the targets. And that was in the mid-'80s and early '90s.
Yeah, there's no comparison between the efficiencies of today's bows and the bows back then.
Not only that, but the component and the parts and pieces, right?
Absolutely.
So we are leaps and bounds ahead of where we were when they were doing those studies. Not to mention, everything was tested at 20 yards. They were setting up, to check penetration. So I think that if you're going to follow that theory of 600, 650 grains, 700 grains, because you want to do that and you're willing to accept the trade-offs like we talked about on the last video, more power to you. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I'm telling you that my style of hunting in the terrain that I hunt, in the species that I like to hunt, do not lend themselves well to shooting a 650 grain arrow. And I don't mind shooting an 80-pound bow to give me some more speed, right? But even by shooting an 80-pound bow at 600, I'm giving up too much on the other end. So with that being said, talking a little bit more about the species, right? We talked a little bit about the elk, some of the components, whether you're doing a collar system or you're doing, more insert weight, whatever the case is, to get you a little bit more front of center. Neither one of us really care about FOC because I guess, and we talked about it the other day, I've killed elk 15, 18, 17 years ago with the 380 grain arrow.
Yeah, and I've hunted elk with basically the same build. So. And
I've killed elk with a 525 grain arrow. And everything in between. So it's one of those things that, do I see the benefits now as I've gotten older of a heavier setup? I sure do. I don't plan on hunting elk with the 385 grain arrow anymore.
Sure.
But I've done it, and I've had pass-throughs on multiple elk with the light setup where I was trying to go chase a speed game. That being said, I think that the components and like I said, the parts and pieces that you can put together in the variety of setups are endless.
Yep, and the quality of the material.
And so that being said, let's just kind of hypothetical again, right? Mule deer, we're in Colorado. We can hunt mule deer here from flatlands.
Yeah, Eastern Plains, Colorado, yeah.
Out to above tree line, 11, 12, 13,000 feet, okay?
Yeah.
So in most of those situations, when you're talking about an arrow that's going to be able to potentially reach out and touch an animal like that, you start talking about what's going to fly the best. Like I said, accuracy's paramount. Accuracy's paramount. Accuracy's paramount. We've already talked about the fudge factor, where if an animal takes a step or you miss by a yard, or let's say you run your sight down to 80 yards, for example, and you set it to 81 by accident, you need to know what those misses, those errors are going to give you at those distances. And things like expandable broadheads start coming into the picture, yep. Right? Hybrid heads. I'm going to be one to say that I've hunted with expandables and hybrids almost exclusively over the last 7-ish years. I've had some fixed blades that I've set up, but I think the last animal I took was about 8 years ago with a fixed blade head, and I had good success with those. But what I can tell you is, as I'm preparing myself for a setup and a hunt that's out, that potentially could lend itself for a 60, 70 yard shot on a mule deer, antelope, what have you, I want something that's going to be giving me the best accuracy in all conditions.
Which, generally speaking, would be talking smaller profile.
Smaller profile, whether that's an expandable or I really like the hybrid heads. I've been a huge fan. But a lot of people like to also discredit the durability of said heads. And I'll be the first one to tell you that, yeah, a lot of those heads are not as durable as an Iron Will or, some of the other high-end,
high performance, absolutely high-end broadhead companies.
I'm not going to argue that point. I would agree to that. In my perspective, I'm going to take the trade-off again on that spectrum to where this hybrid or potentially expandable is going to be more accurate for me at 60, 70, and 80 yards in the event that there's a 10, 12, 15 mile an hour crosswind. Mm-hmm. And I know that because I've tested that.
Yep.
I put fixed blade broadheads on and expandable broadheads on and shot them at 60 yards and saw fixed blades almost miss the target with a 12, 14 mile an hour crosswind. Not a ton of wind, but they catch wind. I mean, they got a bigger profile on those blades, right? Yeah. So that's something that, again, I'm not going to argue with people. You can comment that you think it's a crappy setup. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and we were just talking there specifically about broadheads. Added to that, a bigger broadhead like a fixed blade head is generally going to require a larger vane, yeah, which is also going to affect drift. So all in all, it just keeps compounding as we start playing with the bigger head, bigger vanes, smaller head, smaller vanes. Maybe you get a little bit less drift. But again, when you go to a smaller head, really small head, then maybe you're going to that expandable, and then, like you mentioned earlier, the durability of the head. So, in my personal opinion, as long as it's durable enough to take down my game, that's all I need. Yeah. I don't need an indestructible head. I just need a head strong enough to manage the game that I'm pursuing.
And that's where, again, like we've in the last video again mentioned, most people are building a setup to prepare for a worst case scenario, and neither of us are saying we don't ever have worst case scenarios.
It happens.
That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm saying on that spectrum, Bo has his comfort level of where he likes to be. I have mine, and you might have yours. So to rewind a little bit, if you're a person that's never going to shoot anything past 40 yards because you just say, this is my limit, and I hunt more in a tree stand or a ground blind, or even hunting elk in a tree stand or a ground blind, if you've controlled your environment enough to where you're limiting your shot distance, and you say 650 grain arrow is what works best for me, fixed blade head, this setup, great. You've at least taken the time to analyze the surroundings, the animal, and what's going on. That's all we're saying is, don't just take into account somebody said you need to shoot 600 grains because you need so much momentum for elk.
Yep.
Okay. Did you take into consideration all those other factors from the standpoint of, will you potentially shoot at an animal without ranging it? Yes or no? Okay, at what distance is your limit? Second to that, I'm going to hunt in terrain where it's usually always windy. It's always windy. Okay, are you prepared then to have a setup that's going to be a best accuracy flying, give you best results through those conditions? There's so many other factors that come into play, right? I mean, we can go down different rabbit hole after different rabbit hole.
This conversation's almost endless.
Yes.
But for the most part, I would say to anybody out there, no matter what the game you're pursuing is, having the utmost confidence in your choice of your arrow setup, bow setup is paramount.
And that's where building a setup, testing it, again, create that baseline, right? Put some broadheads on your bow, on your arrow, tune it, to make sure. With us saying accuracy is paramount, if your bow's not properly tuned with your arrows and your broadheads aren't aligned
You're going to
properly,
get skewed results regardless.
you know, so take the time to follow those steps first. Once you've checked off those boxes, and it's time to go out and test your broadheads now. Go out and test them in all different kind of conditions, you know, and as best as you can, because not everybody can go out and shoot super long distance all the time, or test them in different. Do the best you can, test them there, and like Bo said, once you gain confidence in a setup, whether it's be it by practice, taking multiple animals, whatever it is, as you build that confidence, that moment where you're at full draw on an animal, you don't have that doubt creeping in as to, I hope I can make this shot, or I hope I don't make a bad shot. No, you're going to know, or you're going to have a higher confidence level of, you get the pin on the target and the animal gives you a good shot opportunity, odds are that you're going to put a good shot on it because you trust your setup.
Yep.
So great point on that, Bo, with the confidence factor. Again, this one was just kind of a little bit starting to dabble a little bit more into hypotheticals, because that's really all you can do with these bow arrow builds, is because you're really building to a hypothetical situation.
100%.
And you can take your previous experiences, or we can take combine our experiences, and in a lot of cases, what we do here at the Pro Shop is we don't speak from a place of, hey, I've killed hundreds of animals. I don't come from that standpoint. I come from a standpoint of, when we have hundreds and hundreds of customers come through the shop and tell us their stories about their specific builds with broadheads, animal positioning, what happened, you know, the whole 9 yards, we're also taking bits and pieces of that.
We're learning from them. We don't know it all. So when you guys, you know, if any of you guys come into the shop and you start telling us about a hunting story, we're learning from you.
That's it.
We're getting some experience, you know, not experiences directly in that situation, but we're learning from your experience and taking little notes, mental notes.
We're gathering information. That's it. That's all we're doing. So just know that, again, a ton of moving parts. We're going to kind of dive a little bit more into broadheads and a few other portions of the arrow build process. But to reel this one back in a little bit, build an arrow setup to the animal or to the species you're going to be pursuing, right? And if you're going to be pursuing multiple animals, take a pick, and, you know, I usually go worst case scenario, bigger bone structure on an elk. I'm going to build, if I have one setup, I'm going to build towards that. And then knowing that if I may go hunt mule deer or something else in addition to elk, where shot scenarios could lend themselves to being in that last third of my effective range, I want to make sure I'm confident in all portions of my effective range, not just I need to get a shot, you know, inside 30 yards or 40 yards. If you truly want to have an effective range of X, call it 60, 70, 80 yards, you need to have confidence out to all those distances with all the moving parts.
Yep.
So thanks for checking out this video. Make sure you comment and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and get in on the gear giveaway, which is basically just directly the people that are commenting on the videos posted in 2021. So Maven Optics, we've got a few things we're going to give away from Maven to start. Hunt giveaway, Kansas, 2021. If you can draw, we're going to give this hunt away April 15th, so you still have a few days to put in for the Kansas draw if you don't already hunt Kansas. Row Hunting Resources, we're going to be partnering with them on this giveaway, so thank you to them for partnering. And again, Maven, huge shout out to Maven. They've been a partner of ours for a long time, and a strong supporter. If you decide you're going to buy some Maven Optics, type in Alpha Gift at checkout. They're going to throw a little bonus gift your way, and you know, get some cool swag from them. So thank you guys for checking out this video. Stay tuned. We're going to be bringing you some more on the arrow build topic.